In December 2019, a new type of coronavirus called novel coronavirus or COVID-19 was identified in Wuhan, China. According to Bloomberg.com, in the article, the last and only foreign scientist in the Wuhan lab speaks out in the person of Daniel Anderson. Experts believe the virus now known as SARS-CoV-2 was beginning to spread in Wuhan, China. When the COVID-19 pandemic first broke out in Wuhan, it began spreading in the whole of China and to the world. The numbers of new infections and deaths in Wuhan were increasing. A series of mandatory actions were taken by the Chinese government, such as measures to restrict travel across cities. The city was in strict lockdown. Case detection and contact tracing, quarantine, guidance, and information to the public. Despite the strict health measures instituted by the Chinese government to prevent the spread of the virus, the disease has infected a big number of patients that far exceeded the equivalence of severe acute respiratory syndromes or SARS and Middle East Respiratory Syndrome (MERS), and eventually the virus spread throughout the whole world. The concepts such as lockdowns, mask mandates, and social distancing were unknown to most of us. Today, they are part of our everyday language as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact all aspects of our lives. The pandemic has harmed the poor and vulnerable the most, and it is threatening to push millions more into poverty. In the June edition of the Global Economic Prospects, COVID-19 has triggered a global crisis like no other. A global health crisis that, in addition to an enormous human toll, is leading to the deepest global recession since the Second World War. Despite the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in human lives, it brought a positive contribution, though temporary, to the mitigation of climate change destructive effects on lives and livelihood. The pandemic forced economies to slow down due to the strict quarantine measures. The carbon emissions and human mobility have been reduced, which improves air quality, especially in busy cities.
In 2020, the world threw the models a new test when people began behaving very, very differently with almost no warning. A global pandemic set in. Around the globe, people stopped driving and flying in large numbers, started staying home, and completely changed their pollution patterns. In particular, emissions of nitrogen dioxide, a common air pollutant released by cars, airplanes, and many factories, declined significantly. But just how much did the shutdown change our emissions? NASA's Geoatmospheric Composition Model offers an answer. The model run functions by assuming that nothing was different in 2020, that people continued behaving roughly the same as they would have with no activity shutdowns, adding the same number of atmospheric pollutants to the air. It's then a matter of subtraction. Comparing those models to real-world observations made by satellites during the shutdowns shows how significant the decrease in pollution was in various cities. Activity shutdowns started in Wuhan, China, and in January, observed emissions of nitrogen dioxide began to diverge from what models predicted, about 60% less than predicted, that is. As the virus and the associated shutdowns moved west, European cities began to experience decreased levels of nitrogen dioxide emissions as well. In Madrid, Spain, nitrogen dioxide emissions were also 60% less than modeled. Shortly after, cities in the United States began to follow suit. In March, New York City shut down all but essential activities, and emissions dropped by 45%. 50 of the 61 analyzed cities show nitrogen dioxide reductions between 20 and 50%, clearly linking lower NO2 emissions to pandemic-related restrictions, and therefore human activity. This sudden change in human behavior gives us new insights into the relationship between human activities and air pollution, which still has many unanswered scientific questions. The only way we can fully understand air pollution is by combining surface observations, satellite data, and computer models. With NASA's satellite monitoring system and computing capabilities, it's uniquely positioned to provide detailed information about air quality everywhere in the world.
2019 was the second hottest year on record, with the past decade the hottest in human history. Greenhouse gases concentrations are at the highest level in 3 million years.
Nobody wanted that climate change mitigation will be done through this health crisis. COVID-19 has a dark cost to our lives, healthcare systems, and the mental health of people around the world. Nevertheless, we are responsible for whatever we have done to our planet, whether be it good or bad.